Hey folks, I'm Alex Dowd.
And I'm Katie Rife.
The Academy Awards are just a month away, and in preparation for Hollywood's biggest night, we're going through all the nominees in the major categories. Today, in the first installment of our 4-week series, we'll tackle the Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Actress lineups. Who will win and who should? Let's discuss.
Welcome to Film Club.
Okay, folks, welcome again to Film Club. We are here today. We're going to be talking about the Academy Awards, which are about a month off. Just for starters, how you doing, Katie?
I'm doing pretty all right, Dad. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing not too bad. I'm doing not too bad. I'm looking forward to being vaccinated, so that'll be nice.
Absolutely.
And I feel like we talk about this fairly regularly on this show, but just the state of the movie industry and how it's changing, I think the next few months are going to be pretty interesting, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like more people getting vaccinated, more people are going to feel comfortable going out to movie theaters. And it'll be interesting, too, because, like, speaking of vaccine rollout, here in Chicago, if people don't know this is a city that's well known for bureaucracy and corruption. And there have been some... Our rollout has been slower here than it's been on the coast.
Yeah, for sure. There's been some bumps in the system here, but some
cronyism
for sure. Vote early, vote often. I don't know how that applies to vaccinations, I guess, but
well, I guess for some additional context, there's a big political scandal here earlier in the week where a hospital was kind of charged with giving out shots that were meant for, like underserved communities to like judges, sons and wives and stuff like that.
Just repulsive. Honestly.
That's Chicago, baby.
Yeah, that's how we do. In any case, as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be talking about the Academy Awards for the next month or so. Where basically we'll have it's a 4-week series where we will be talking about the major Oscar categories. It's something that we have historically done on Film Club, and this is the first year we'll be doing it on the podcast, obviously because of timing. This year's Academy Awards are obviously a little bit different than in most years. There have been some. For one thing, they're happening later than they traditionally happen.
Yeah, they've been going on approximately forever, it feels like already, and we're about to do a full month of coverage.
Yeah, I mean, Oscar season is already something that I feel like dominates a huge part of the film critic and movie lover calendar. It's something that usually goes from, I would say, at the absolute latest September until at the absolute earliest February. I mean, last year, obviously, the awards happened in February, right before the pandemic happened. It was kind of...
we had that beautiful moment where Bong Joon-ho was the world's biggest name for a night. What a fun time that was.
Yeah, it was really fun last year to see that happen and to see Parasite win Best Picture. And that's going to be a kind of hard moment to top, I think, this year. Though I think,
oh, gosh, yeah.
But there are some very good movies up, and obviously over the next 4 weeks, we'll be talking more about them. As of this recording, Nomadland has just won the PGA, the Producers Guild Award, which is often a very important first step in something going on to win Best Picture. So
right.
It would be cool to see Nomadland win Best Picture. I don't want to spoil the content of later episodes, but I will say that might be the best of the nominees this year. So that would be cool.
The ceremony is going to be interesting, too, because they're doing it in 2 locations in L.A. and kind of spreading everybody out. Like, part of it's going to be held at Union Station.
Yeah.
And they're telling nominees that they can't Zoom in. They're supposed to show up in person. And for people who live in like England, I'm curious how that's going to work, because people would be less willing maybe to take a flight to LA than they would be normally. But another thing that's interesting is Steven Soderbergh is part of the team that's directing the Oscars this year.
Oh wow, that should be interesting then. Yeah. I wonder if it'll be noticeable. I mean, I would definitely say that there are such a thing that, I mean, beyond whoever wins and whoever loses, there is such a thing. As somebody who's been watching the Oscars since I was probably 9 years old and has not missed a year in that time, I will say that I can definitely notice when a show is well produced as opposed to not, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays this year. I mean, you kind of gotta have to give them a little leeway. I mean, if it's a bumpy show, it's a bumpy time. you know?
Yeah, totally. Like, the Golden Globes were, fairly smooth, all things considered, but it was a little weird. You don't really get that, like, in the room electricity, obviously, when people are in Zoom rooms.
Very much so. I don't know how I feel about forcing the nominees to show up to the ceremony or something. That's it sort of feels like a year where we could all accept this is not going to be as glamorous event as normal, Like, why not just do it on Zoom? I get it. It's not as cool. And one could say that the Academy Awards have really always been at least partially about the ratings that they get or don't get every year on television. So I can see why they would feel that wouldn't necessarily be as big of a ratings hit for them. But why risk it right now,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an ongoing thing, and I wouldn't be surprised if they push it back a little bit, but the initial directive was we want you to show up in person.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, so, I mean, in terms of other differences, I mean, this year, obviously, the eligibility window was longer. That was sort of a solution that they came up with to avoid having to nominate, First Cow or something. Sorry, I'm a little bitter about that, but... I'll say this:
we cinematography. Come on,
we here at the AV Club, we said we're not getting on that calendar. There's plenty to celebrate from January until December. I know it was a strange year for releases. There wasn't a lot in theaters. There was plenty to nominate, plenty to honor. I feel very strongly about our top 25 of the year, which you can find on the website, obviously. I think that the Academy should have done that as well and just said, we'll work with what opens and what comes out, within the calendar year. But they did get Hollywood got a couple extra months, basically. Anything that opened from January of 2020, that blissful pre-pandemic period in the United States anyway, until the end of February 2021 is eligible. And that did pay off for a few films, probably most notably Judas and the Black Messiah, which is, I believe, the only Best Picture nominee of the bunch that is a late opener as in a 2021 film.
A couple of them came out, like in quote-unquote wider release in January, like Promising Young Woman and Minari. But
that's standard. I mean, that's standard, isn't it?
Exactly,
I mean, we see that every year. A movie will get a qualifying run for a week or two at the end of the previous year of the year in question, and then it will come out for everyone else, basically.
That's true. That's not really unusual. Nomadland was like that too.
Right, exactly. So that's changed, and obviously this year also is the first year that the Academy has basically said, fuck it, your movie does not need to open in theaters. Like, for obvious reasons, that requirement that we've historically had, a requirement that has in the past cost certain films. I mean, for a while, the Academy even said, like, it's not just that it has to open in theaters, it's that it has to be in theaters first. If your movie goes to, say, HBO or something first and then theaters, then it's out. Like historically...
Yeah, then it gets an Emmy.
Right, exactly,
right?
Yeah. So... But this is the first year where basically if something came out on a streaming platform, it was eligible. And I think obviously you're seeing a lot of films in contention this year that were essentially streaming films because almost everything was a streaming film this year, Right.
Let's clarify for the people who don't necessarily know the ins and outs. So, and also just to double check for me, my understanding was that it had to play for a full week in a theater in Los Angeles before the end of the year to qualify for an Oscar. Is that right?
Well, I think that's traditionally true. I don't think that's true this year.
Well, no, but that's the rule. That's the rule that got broken.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. You're right.
Okay.
Yes. So it needs at least a 1 week run in Los Angeles in order to be considered for an Oscar. Yep.
Yeah, and sometimes I do kind of envy people that live in LA in this, is that sometimes people with some delusional ideas end up four-walling theaters in LA thinking that
Well, we just want to be in contention. Yeah.
Yes, that's how The Room infamously got launched. Tommy Wiseau bought out a theater in LA and just played it. Yeah, you can discover some fun stuff.
Was he really hoping to get an Academy Award nomination?
No, but it was that style of thing where he was like, well, it's a real movie if it plays in LA for a week, so that's what happened.
Sense. Yeah.
Then some smart asses who, made a habit of going to go see these kind of like random four-walled things went to see it, and the rest is history.
Yep. So in any case, we're going to start this series. We're going to be talking about all the major categories over the next month and the nominees and just talking about, who we think will win in these categories, and who we'd like to see win. We're starting this week with as the Academy often starts on Oscar night, with the supporting categories. So we'll be talking about Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Actress this week. So let's get into it. Let's start with Best Supporting Actor. So for starters, these are the nominees. For those who don't know, I'm going to read them off. Sacha Baron Cohen for The Trial of the Chicago 7. Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami. Paul Raci for Sound of Metal. And Lakeith Stanfield for Judas and the Black Messiah. So I think maybe we should start by discussing the fact that this is actually a kind of historically significant lineup. This is the first time, unless I'm mistaken, I believe this is the first time 3 black actors have ever been nominated in the same acting category in the same year.
Yeah. 2 of them from the same film, which is pretty unusual too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, you see over the years we have seen situations where you'll get double nominees from a film in the same category. Something like I think most recently it might have been The Favorite, where both Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz were up for Best Supporting Actress for The Favorite. But I don't think that's ever happened for black actors with the Academy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me. I'm sure that there's a lot of complicated reasons behind this, but it seems to me that when it comes to diversity wins, it's the acting categories that come in first, and then later you start seeing writers and directors of color being nominated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I think you're right, and I think that the fact that there were much few black black artists honored on the other side of the camera this year. We saw a number of actors nominated this year, actors of color. But I think if you look at let's look at the Best Picture lineup, for example, there were a couple films that were sort of highly expected to be competing in the Best Picture lineup. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and also One Night in Miami, both these stage adaptations that were generally quite well received, and neither of them ended up in the Best Picture lineup. I think that you're right that the Academy is much more willing to honor black artists in the acting categories than maybe any other category.
And do you think that this, we have seen some movement in this area, just in greater diversity in general, and the Oscar nominees better reflecting kind of the actual, pool of talent that's out there. Do you think that that's a consequence of the Academy greatly expanding its membership following the Oscar So White controversy a few years ago? I
do. I do think that's part of it, to be honest, because I do think that part of that expansion plan was also being if you have been in the Academy for a century, I'm exaggerating, but for a very long time, maybe it's time to sit out the voting, and we're going to get some new voices in there. I remember that was a source of controversy a little bit, and I don't want to.
Well, I mean, every year in the trade publications and Hollywood Reporter and Variety, they run these anonymous Oscar voter ballots, and some of the stuff that sometimes you can tell that a voter is 300 years old and won't watch a movie with more than one black person in it. You can tell.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I remember. I remember when Brokeback Mountain was up for Best Picture. And there was this talk that a lot of people thought Brokeback Mountain was almost certainly going to win Best Picture.
Right.
And then you saw a few of those interviews, and they were basically voters who were there's no way in hell I am voting for the gay cowboy movie, basically.
Yeah.
And I don't want to generalize. I'm sure there are older members of the Academy that have more progressive ideas about the world and who have hipper taste, but this is an organization that has historically been old white guys, for a very long time. So I do think
they dominated the industry for a really long time.
Exactly.
So,
So I think opening up the membership and making a concerted effort to diversify has resulted in changes. I'm not sure we would have seen. Moonlight win Best Picture. I'm not sure we would have seen Parasite win Best Picture if that hadn't happened, if that initiative hadn't been put in place. Because the other thing too is that there are some really hip and smart and talented filmmakers that are now in the Academy as well. And I think,
that's the other thing. Some people who are like, how on earth were you not in the Academy before?
Right, exactly.
It kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way because, for a long time, like, kind of, and it's still this way in some ways, where it's almost like a badge of honor for a legendary director to have never been nominated for an Oscar, because that means that their stuff is like just too cool for
exactly.
the Academy. And it still is like this a little bit, but that becomes a self-perpetuating cycle because they're not in the Academy because they've never been nominated, and then people who do interesting work don't get nominated because interesting people aren't in the Academy,
Yep. There's very much, there's also that, you're kind of touching upon, too, the fact that with the Academy Awards, it sometimes feels like they want to honor people who have been in the club, basically. It's like, once you're there, you're going to be back, that sort of thing. So suddenly, the people who are being considered every year, the names that are being tossed around when we first start getting into awards season, they're often people who have been nominated before. So it's like, once you're in, that sort of thing.
Totally.
I will say this year is interesting because there actually are, particularly in the categories we're talking today, a lot of first-time nominees. In the supporting actor category, we're actually looking at only one person who has been nominated before, and that's Daniel Kaluuya, who was up for Get Out a few years ago. Everybody else is a first-time nominee.
Yeah, and, talk about kind of outsiders being brought in. Paul Raci is who was nominated for Sound of Metal. He plays the, I suppose, the counselor, or he runs the kind of group home that Riz Ahmed's character goes to live in after he loses his hearing in the film. He's a Chicago theater actor. He is not a Hollywood insider at all. Like, this is the most surprising nomination to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, and in fact, I felt like with him, this is something that keeps coming up. Like I've heard a lot of people say in the run up to the nominations, which is that Raci didn't even have a Wikipedia page until recently.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, not a Hollywood insider by any stretch.
I don't want to toot our horns too much, but I do feel like this is one of those cases where critics helped this happen, I think, because he won a few precursor awards, in the lead up to the nominations. Like, Raci was somebody whose name was getting thrown around a lot when he was coming up, and he is not somebody who's in the club, and he is not somebody who I feel like the Academy would necessarily pay that much attention to if there wasn't a concerted campaign to get him in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And actually, the critics group that we both belong to, the Chicago Film Critics Association, gave him their Best Supporting Actor award.
Yep, that's right.
In December.
That's right.
Yeah, we were part of it. Yeah, Sound of Metal is. We'll talk about it a few times over the course of the series because it's up in a few different categories. But that is one when, you talk about like snubs and surprises. In terms of surprises, the amount of times that Sound of Metal came up in the nominations was surprising to me because it just doesn't seem like a quote unquote Oscar movie to me.
Same, yeah. I wasn't necessarily expecting that to do as well as it did. In retrospect, looking at it, it's like this is not a film that I think would be too challenging for Academy voters. I think it has qualities that they like in other dramas. It's sort of an adversity story in some respects. True. There's an aspect of redemption to it as well. It just it does seem a little. Again, it does seem a little cooler than your average, than what we think of historically as an Oscar movie, but that has changed.
Yeah, it's about a heavy metal band. I don't know.
I really like Raci in that role too. I think he's really strong as that character and as somebody who becomes this kind of this voice of this calming voice of reason, but also somebody who has some fairly strict rules about how this place is run. Becomes a kind of a tough love mentor figure, which is the kind of character we will see sometimes show up in. I guess actually particularly in this race, I feel like you could probably go through supporting actor over the years and find a lot of characters who are at least vaguely like the one that Raci plays in this film.
That's really true. Yeah, the role itself is a quote unquote Oscar type of role. Yeah.
But he doesn't play it. This is not. For a film that is. For a film that is at least partially about loud music and is also a film that has some, I would say, some very big dramatic moments, he's pretty much understated through almost all of it. Even the big moment that he has, I don't want to say too much for those who haven't seen the movie. His final scene is not played, is played very subtly in some respects, I would say.
And one other interesting thing about Paul Raci, and I'd be curious your thoughts about how this relates to being a quote unquote Oscars performance, is he does have a personal connection to the material. Both of Raci's parents are deaf. Raci is hearing, but both of his parents are deaf. And in interviews and things like that, he describes ASL, American Sign Language, which he uses in the movie, as his first language.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I do think the Academy loves when there's some kind of hook to a performance that they're honoring. So I think I think the fact that both that there's a personal angle with Raci's performance, and also the fact that he's playing a deaf character, I think might have factored in him being nominated. He's also just really good, Yeah,
he's just really good at it, and he's also, arguably, like you were saying, he's a supportive role in the film. Mm-hmm. All these other films that are nominated, Trial of Chicago 7, Judas the Black Messiah, One Night in Miami, who the lead is in those films is a little more ambiguous, particularly I would argue that Judas and the Black Messiah, it's pretty obvious who the lead of the film is, and that's a very interesting case. But let's talk about that later, and maybe talk about Trial of Chicago 7 and One Night in Miami, which are classic ensemble pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both films that that have these large casts. Although I will say with One Night in Miami, this is a question that I always find interesting when talking about the supporting category, is what really constitutes a supporting performance. And often when you're dealing with a large and prominent cast, they'll just kind of decide that either they'll just sort of arbitrarily pick one person in the cast and say that person's the lead, or they'll just make the decision that everyone is supporting in the film.
Right, yeah. I think with this film, it's a question of is it a matter of screen time, or is it a matter of who is the ostensible protagonist to the film? Because One Night in Miami opens on Eli Goree as Cassius Clay, before he changed his name to Muhammad Ali. And I thought of him when I was watching the film as the kind of character that the other characters revolved around. And so kind of that would make him the protagonist in my mind. But he gets an equal amount of screen time with everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the opinion, actually, that when it comes to One Night in Miami, that all four of them are leads. That there is that the supporting performances in that film would be everybody who's not one of these four guys,
Right, like Lance Reddick is a supporting character.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
For those who don't know, I mean, we talked about One Night in Miami on an episode of Film Club in the fall when we were at when we were covering virtually the Toronto International Film Festival. One Night in Miami, which is based on a play, is about this kind of this much fabled sort of historic meeting of these four major figures of Black American history: Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke. So these four guys all met in a hotel room in Miami in 1964. Supposedly that really happened. The movie kind of creates this speculative drama about what they might have discussed that night. And I really do think that every one of those actors is a lead in terms of how they're balanced in the film. I think that this is a case, though, where somebody involved in this campaign said that we might not be traditionally the leading acting categories tend to be a little bit more competitive and a little harder to get a nomination in those categories, whereas supporting you have a better shot. I think they kind of said we need to. I think they really pushed for Leslie Odom Jr., who plays Sam Cooke in the film, to be nominated to be their sort of representative in the supporting acting category.
Yeah. It kind of is a matter of that sometimes, right? Like someone at the studio decides that, okay, well, we're going to put our weight behind you.
Right. And often they will be pushing for a particular category. It should be noted that the Academy does not have to honor the wishes of a studio. People can vote for whoever they want in whatever category they want. Again, we'll go back to Judas and the Black Messiah, but Stanfield was pushed as lead by Warner Brothers. Voters put him in the supporting actor category. In this case, I think that they were. I think basically they decided, and this makes, I guess, the most sense, but to me anyway, but that Kingsley Ben-Adir, who plays Malcolm X, that he was the lead of that film, and that I think the others were supporting. I do think that Ben-Adir gives the best performance in that film.
Yeah, he would, like, you know, if it was up to me and they said you can honor one performance from One Night in Miami, I would have honored Kingsley Ben-Adir. One thing that's interesting talking about, you know, that's not to say that anyone else did a bad job. I thought all the performances in this movie were quite good.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the acting's very strong all across the board. But we were talking about having a hook. Leslie Odom Jr. is a singer and does sing Sam Cooke songs in the movie, which, you know, that it never hurts to have a little cherry on top of your good acting.
Totally.
When it comes to awards nominations.
Yeah, and a part of me thinks that maybe we're going to see, like, when they do the Oscar clips on the night, I'm always fascinated by what they choose to honor. We're going to see a clip of him singing. That sort of feels like that might be in there.
That's entirely possible, yeah.
I mean, the Academy traditionally loves... it's a cliche at this point to say this, but the Academy has always loved famous people playing other famous people. You know,
totally.
And they
this whole movie is that.
It is. I'm a little surprised it didn't do a little bit better than it did, because it is there is so much of that in this film. You know, and I think that him doing a convincing Sam Cooke, maybe both in terms of you know, something like mannerisms, but also in terms of the singing, I think might have pushed him through. You know. Yeah,
totally, and. You know, looking at the Trial of the Chicago 7, Sacha Baron Cohen's performance, it's one of the, I guess, I mean, he doesn't sing,
right.
But he does put on an accent, and it is one of the, I guess, one of relatively splashier performances in that film, because he puts on this accent as Abby Hoffman, and, you know, the film keeps cutting away to him doing, you know, what one of the other Eddie Redmayne's character derisively calls stand-up, and he has this big courtroom scene towards the end. So, you know, that's a little bit of a splashier performance.
For sure. I don't find that the accent that convincing. Because I
didn't either.
You know, I don't think the accent's great. I mean, I actually think it's a really good performance, and I think that in general he captures the spirit of Hoffman in so much as we know that spirit. But I think the accent's a little shaky. And obviously he's a little too old for the role too.
Well, he just hits the, like, you don't have to hit an accent really hard. It's usually not convincing when you hit an accent really hard.
Yep. And the other thing is that, you know, when you're talking about acting and you're talking about when somebody is playing somebody, a real person, again, the Academy might prefer a super technically precise impersonation, but that's not necessarily the mark of a great piece of acting. Like, a great piece of mimicry isn't always a mark of a great piece of acting, in my opinion.
I fully agree with that.
Yeah. Like we accept him as Hoffman because I think he does get at, like, Hoffman's persona really well. And I'm not a fan of this film in general. I have a lot of problems with this film, but Cohen is not one of them. I do think that is the one film in this lineup where I that is truly an ensemble piece, and it's hard to make a case that anybody in that movie is the lead. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I would think that Eddie Redmayne's kind of the lead because, you know, he's the audience identification character, the one who's going, hey, guys, let's slow it down with the revolution a little bit.
By the way, that's fucking bullshit. Like, Tom Hayden that's not who Tom Hayden was. I mean, there's a really, actually, honestly, if listeners want a really good version of this story, of this remarkable true story that the Trial of Chicago 7 tells, there's a documentary called Chicago 10 that gets into it, and it handles the courtroom stuff basically in an interesting way, in that it uses a kind of rotoscope animation style to literally bring to life the transcripts from the courtroom. And if you watch that film and then watch Trial of Chicago 7, you can see the extent to which Sorkin distorted all of this. And in my opinion, you don't need to distort this story. It's already really exciting and insane, you know?
He just put all the most kind of, like, audience, you know, friendly, conventional wisdom kind of, lenses on it, like it literally ends with, it's history, spoiler alert, I guess. It literally ends with, the courtroom applauding the Chicago 7 for their bravery. While the evil judge bangs his gavel and goes, order, order, and no one's listening to him. It's the 60s. Like, yeah.
He just didn't need to gild the lily with this one. Like, he
truly didn't.
The historical record is fascinating. Like, this is not one where he needed to embellish a lot, and he embellishes everything in that film. And I'll get off this side note in a second, but just the depiction of Tom Hayden as some reluctant revolutionary is just bullshit. I mean, he threw a fucking fist to the jury at the beginning of the trial in real life. He was not somebody. I mean, I get that, like, sometimes you have to take dramatic liberties, but this is a case where I feel like Sorkin took a bunch of extremely unnecessary dramatic liberties to make this feel more like a cookie cutter crowd pleaser. And
totally, take the fangs off it, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't have mainstream audiences identifying with a revolutionary.
Yep.
Like, the main character has to be at least somewhat non-threatening in that way.
Yeah, he pushes everybody to the center in that film. I mean, there's a character played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the film who is sort of the prosecutor on the other side, and Sorkin depicts him as this kind of principled conservative, this sort of person who is reluctant to take the case because he doesn't necessarily think there is a big case there. He's a patriot, but he's conflicted about it. Like, that dude in real life, the dude he's playing, they called him Darth Vader. That's how much of a fucking fascist that guy was in real life. So, anyway.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, I think one thing that is interesting too, like there's a lot of overlap between Trial of Chicago 7 and Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yes.
Like, the character of Fred Hampton is in both films.
Yep, that's right. Yep. The two almost seem in conversation with each other, although I feel like in Trial it's a lot of dramatic embellishment, and Judas at times feels like it is sticking as close to the historical record as possible. I would say mostly to its strength, occasionally to its slight detriment.
In what way?
Well, I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit when we talked about Judas and the Black Messiah from Sundance a few weeks ago. But there's a part of me that thinks that the movie would be a little bit stronger if they developed a more, I don't want to say more dramatically conventional or satisfying relationship, but at least a closer relationship between your two main characters in that. Because honestly, the movie does not suggest that these two really knew each other that well. And
no,
I get, like, they probably didn't in real life. They probably did not have a close relationship, but that is there's so much rich potential in that relationship, in this kind of, the movie's called Judas and the Black Messiah, in this kind of betrayal that's built into it, that I longed occasionally to just honestly to just have more scenes between them.
Yeah, you're right that, like, if, say, Aaron Sorkin had written this movie, there would be a scene that they would have excerpted at the Oscars, which would have been, the two main characters, Fred Hampton and Bill O'Neill, who's Lakeith Stanfield's character, who is the FBI informant who infiltrates the Chicago chapter of the Black Panthers, ultimately leading to Hampton's assassination. There would be a scene of the two of them sitting, late night somewhere having a long, discussion heart to heart. And you don't really get that in this movie.
And honestly, I kind of wish you did. Because I kind of feel like the movie might benefit from that, because it is such a fascinating notion anyway. Because Stanfield's character, obviously the real life FBI informant, Bill O'Neill, is somebody who is grappling with what he's doing and grappling with his feelings of guilt, and also his feelings of desperation about this choice that he's made in the situation he's found himself in. But the movie does not push that really hard, and I think it could have maybe pushed it a little harder by suggesting that these two were a little closer than they really were. That, to me, is poetic license that I think would have worked in the movie's favor.
Well, let's talk about it in terms of acting and performances. In my mind, talk about who would be the lead. If you had asked me, I would say that Daniel Kaluuya would be the lead in this film.
I think Stanfield's the lead, honestly.
Okay.
I think Kaluuya is a little bit more. Honestly, this is another case where I think that if it were up to me, they would both be up for lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're both leading performances. No, I agree with that.
They're definitely more dual leads than they're both supporting.
Right.
Because both their names are in the title.
Right.
They're both in the title.
And this has a big cast, but it's not like something like the Trial of Chicago 7 where the focus is spread out among all these different people. This is a case where I really do feel like everybody else in the cast those roles are subordinate to these two main roles. And,
absolutely.
They both feel like lead performances to me, honestly. But maybe I'd push Stanfield because I like the performance a little bit more, or at least I think he's a more interesting character as written in the film.
Yeah. I've heard some criticisms that Kaluuya was a little bit miscast as Fred Hampton. Not because he's not up to the role. He's obviously a fabulous actor, but because he's a little bit too old to play that role. And so you kind of lose some of the nuance of it being the FBI really did just shoot a bunch of kids. You know?
Yeah. No, 100%. I know he was 21 years old or something
21
when they killed him. Yeah, I mean Kaluuya is not 21, you know.
Right.
And the character who the person who plays Hampton in Trial of Chicago 7, because he shows up in that as well. He's played by Kelvin Harrison Jr., who gave what I thought was the best performance of 2019 in the movie Loose. And it's a
he's a favorite of yours, Kelvin Harrison Jr.
He's great. I got to talk to him that year, and I think he's a really sharp actor and an actor who has a lot of really, really precise control of mannerism, you know, and of expression. He's somebody who can really get like little minutia of expression in a scene, if that makes sense. And his role in I mean, again, he's playing Hampton in Trial of Chicago 7. It's a very small role in that film. It's almost a walk-on in some respects. He's like in 2 or 3 scenes, I think. But he's the appropriate age. You know, he is in his early 20s, whereas Kaluuya is a little older. I also thought Kaluuya, as with Cohen in the Trial of Chicago 7, I thought that Kaluuya did not totally nail the accent either.
I mean, when I think about like, okay, so why was he cast in this role? I assume it's because, you really see it in the movie Widows. If you saw the movie Widows, Daniel Kaluuya has a scene in that film where they're, he's playing like kind of a organized crime type of guy, and he's disciplining a subordinate, and he has this really intense, kind of fire in that scene. And I assume that kind of fire is why he was cast as Fred Hampton, because he gives a lot of speeches in the film, and he's definitely like, you don't get his youth, but you do get his power to unite and inspire, I think, from the film.
He's commanding. Yeah, absolutely. He's commanding. Yeah. And I think that does come across. I prefer Stanfield's performance, but again, that might be at least partially a product of the fact that I think Stanfield is playing on the page the more interesting character. He's playing somebody who has, I mean, in so much as like Judas and the Black Messiah, I think occasionally has the urgency of essentially a thriller. I mean, it's a biographical drama about really a couple years in the life of these characters, but it has occasionally, it really does have the kind of the intensity and the urgency of a thriller, and I think a lot of that comes down to Stanfield, who is playing somebody who is he basically is playing O'Neill as somebody who's like basically a rat in a maze. You know, I mean, he is
absolutely, yeah. He's so squirrely and slippery in this movie, and you can kind of. Yeah, you get this real stink of like a rat jumping off a burning ship.
Yeah. It's like pure survival, you know?
Pure survival, yeah. Pure just trying to, I'd say trying to make it through the day, but his motivations are kind of unclear even in the film, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. I mean, one of the things I find interesting about the movie is that the movie is not really apologizing for Bill O'Neill's choices, you know, and it wants to understand him, and I think it's like it understands that everybody in this movie, in some respects, is caught in this destructive system, you know, and that he is like a gear in that system, and he does not have a ton of options either. But at the same time, the movie is not interested, particularly if you look at how the movie ends. The movie is not interested in redeeming him.
Right. Yeah. I think that, I mean, this movie doesn't have that pull to center that you were talking about in Trial of Chicago 7. It doesn't have the character who goes, wait, guys, what if the government's actually not that bad?
Right.
Like, it doesn't have, there isn't that character in it. Like, the joke is if Judas and the Black Messiah are both supporting, who's the lead? The villain, Jesse Plemons,
right?
But he's a pure villain. He really like he's just sort of he's the embodiment of the banality of evil in that movie. You know, there really isn't a character who represents good intentions on behalf of the American government in Judas and the Black Messiah.
I actually think of him as kind of the Salieri figure, you know, that there's a little bit that this is structured a little bit like something like Amadeus, because I do think that he is kind of the protagonist of the film, but he's also the antagonist in a sense, you know?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so who do you think is going to win supporting actor?
Who do I think is going to win? I'm going to say Daniel Kaluuya because he's been nominated before. He won the Golden Globe. And he gives kind of an inspiring performance, which is something that never hurts your Oscars chances.
I think I agree, honestly. And I think that I think there's a lot of factors working for him. I think you're right that him being the only person in the category who's been nominated for an acting award before, I think helps him. There's still probably some residual affection for his work and his, frankly, fucking fantastic work in Get Out as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that he is playing a character who is inspirational and he's playing a real person. Kaluuya feels like he has the wind at his back in this one. I think the only thing that really hurts him is the possibility of vote splitting. If there are people in the Academy who like Judas and the Black Messiah, if they decide to vote for Stanfield instead, or if there's vote splitting between the two of them, then somebody else could benefit. I just don't know who that would be in this case. I want to say maybe Cohen.
Yeah, I was going to say who would be the runoff candidate then, because I'm not really sure who it would be in that case.
I think it's Cohen just because he had a big year. You know, I mean, he's a double nominee this year.
Yeah.
He's up for co-writing the screenplay for the Borat sequel as well. I mean, that's up for adapted screenplay, which we'll talk about in next week's episode. But so I think Cohen is somebody who had a major year, and I think that he's probably going to pick up some points, some votes because of that. I mean, there are going to be people, I think, who you'll occasionally see this in a year where an actor has like multiple projects that were well received, and I think him returning as Borat, that was mostly a pretty well received film, and I think that could help him. I still think Kaluuya will pull it out, but I think if Kaluuya does not win, I think it'll be Cohen.
Yeah. I just before we move on, I want to give a quick shout out to Lakeith Stanfield, who is, I wouldn't go so far to call him a wild card, but he, he definitely speaks his mind on social media and interviews and things like that. And he had the best Oscars reaction I think I've ever seen, which, normally if somebody puts out a statement through their publicist about how honored they are, he posted on Instagram, "I'm confused too, but fuck it."
That's
Thank
awesome.
you, Lakeith Stanfield. That's amazing.
Very funny. Now, can he please win so we can see his acceptance speech? It'll probably be amazing.
His acceptance speech would be incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. If not this year, he's got to win an Oscar sometime because he would give a great speech.
Yeah. So we both think that Kaluuya will probably win. Who do you think should win?
Oh, gosh. Either Racy or Stanfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm kind of between those two as well. I think those are the two strongest in contention. I'm going to go with Stanfield, and at least partially, I mean, because Stanfield has been such a reliable figure in terms of supporting performances for the last few years. He's somebody he's somebody who shows up.
Supporting player. Yeah.
Yeah, he just improves almost everything he's in. He'll just show up in the margins of a movie sometimes, and he'll even show up in like be pretty good in bad movies too occasionally, again, I don't think that his performance in Judas and the Black Messiah is a supporting performance. I think it's a lead performance. But I think it's both the strongest performance in this category, and also him winning supporting actor would be kind of it would kind of be like being like, thank you for being the best supporting actor of the last 5 years,
Yeah, that legacy kind of thing
exactly.
that you were talking about. Because it is true, if you ever see his name on a cast list, he's going to improve the movie.
Yep,
that's just a fact. Yeah, every time.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, the first thing I saw him in was I'm sure was Short Term 12.
Yes.
Which that whole movie is like, future stars are just all over that film,
Yeah, tell people about Short Term 12 if they don't know. It's like this. It's
So yeah, Short Term 12 is this drama from 2013. It's written and directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, and it sort of is set in a residential treatment facility with basically people who are teenagers who are who come from I mean, it's actually a joke in the movie that people say at-risk youth, and then they get a lot of shit for saying that. But it's basically teenagers who come from troubled homes, that sort of thing. But the cast is just filled with people who later we would see whose career would have a huge jump. I mean, obviously at the top of the cast list is Brie Larson, who was not a star when she made the film, but I think this largely propelled her to stardom. John Gallagher Jr. is in it. Rami Malek is in it.
Also not a star at the time.
Right. I mean, none of these people were big names at the time. And in fact, for a little while when they started to get bigger, I would be like, oh yeah, Rami Malek, he's really funny in Short Term 12,
Yeah, it's this kind of small, modest indie movie with a cast where half the cast has gone on to be like stars and award winners and things like that. It was just this kind of congratulations to the casting director of that film. I hope you feel as smug as you should. Because, Rami Malek, Brie Larson, Lakeith Stanfield, Caitlin Dever, all these names that we know now were not known actors when they appeared in that film in 2020.
Totally. Anyway, so let's move on to Best Supporting Actress, which in some respects I think is kind of a stranger category this year. You see a lot less of the... I think that almost everybody in this category is playing a supporting role. I think you could make the case that Maria Bakalova, who is obviously in the Borat sequel, that you could call her a co-lead. But before moving forward, actually, I should read the nominees. The nominees for Best Actress in a Supporting Role this year are Maria Bakalova for Borat's subsequent movie film, long subtitle that I'm not going to read. Glenn Close in Hillbilly Elegy, Olivia Colman in The Father, Amanda Seyfried in Mank, and Yoon Young Jung in Minari. So I do think this is a slightly stranger mix of nominees this year, at least in terms of what the Academy normally favors. I think that, for one thing, even getting nominated for a comedy is very difficult. That's been discussed over the years.
I know. Yeah. You mean Hillbilly Elegy? But sorry.
Very good.
I saw my in and took it.
Yeah. Yes, but I also mean Maria Bakalova, obviously.
Yeah, you mean Maria Bakalova, yeah.
Who, like Racy, was somebody who was essentially a complete unknown in most of America anyway before she got this role, and it's been kind of amazing to watch an actor who has no industry clout until now, kind of get her moment and be up for an Oscar, and it's remarkable. I mean, honestly, a performance that's this funny and this crass in moments is hardly ever nominated. So it's it's very exciting for me to see her in that category. And totally. Supporting is actually a category where the Academy will often honor sort of up and comers, and I feel like supporting actress, particularly, is a place where sort of actors who have not made it yet, but who are sort of up and comers, like they really like a Star is Born trajectory in that category.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, supporting actress is the place where you'll see little kids.
Right.
Nominated sometimes. Or supporting actor. That's where you'll see child actors sometimes. They hardly ever win, but sometimes they get nominated.
Yep. So this category is made up of several. I mean, there are several people in here who are first-time nominees, but there are also a couple who have been nominated before. Olivia Colman. Yeah. This is her second nomination. She a few years ago won Best Actress for The Favorite in kind of a surprise.
Also that was a really good and memorable acceptance speech. She was very surprised.
That's like one of my favorite wins of the last 10 years, not just because it was such a surprise that she won. I mean, nobody was predicting that she was going to win. It was also, again, that's another performance that is funny. And you could arguably say that The Favorite is a comedy. I think it is. And yeah, it was just very unexpected, and I think she was the best in contention that year. So that was exciting. She is up this year for The Father. She plays the daughter of the one would say the titular father, played by Anthony Hopkins.
She's the daughter.
Yeah, she's the daughter. Yeah, but yeah, so she, Anthony Hopkins' character is going through the early stages of dementia, and she plays the daughter who is trying to kind of to work out his situation and get him some help. And so she is obviously she's a prior nominee, and the other prior nominee is Glenn Close, who this is her 8th nomination. She has been up many times before, and it's a little bit funny to me that she could possibly lose to Olivia Colman again. She was. A lot of people thought that she was going to win for The Wife the year that Coleman won for The Favorite.
Much better movie than Hillbilly Elegy. I mean, I'm not going to rag on it too hard, but my thoughts are on the record on this one.
Well, no, let's rag on it.
Okay.
I mean, I really do think that Close is delivering an Eddie Murphy performance in Hillbilly Elegy.
Listen, that some of the dialogue in that. You call it an Eddie Murphy performance. I call it a fake movie from 30 Rock. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's a Jenna Maroney movie. Like, it's not a real movie. You know, it's like it almost feels like that the producers of that movie were daring the Academy. They're like, we're gonna give you everything you love, but it's gonna suck, and we're gonna see if you still fall for it. And they did.
Yep.
Like, I don't know, man. Like, I just, even keeping the content of the movie aside, the performances in it are comically overplayed. The Academy Award nominated wigs, I don't understand that at all. That must be the classic thing where the Academy, like, if you make a pretty person look ugly, they're like, whoa, back up. Wow, that person looks ugly. Yeah,
it's like a parody of that in a way, because I mean, Close obviously she's wearing a lot of she's wearing some prosthetics, I think, and she is they have made her look less glamorous, one might say, in this role. Right. But I think that's very much in keeping also with. I would say that the makeup and hairstyle in this film is very much in keeping with the broadness of the performances as well. They actually are kind of in sync here. And she plays, I mean, her character, I have to say it was very funny to me scrolling through the nominees this year and just seeing, because, if you go to like the Academy's website, for example, they'll give both the actor and the name of the performer. And it's like you're going through the supporting actress category. And it's like, and Glenn Close as Meemaw.
Yeah, Mema.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the dialogue is just like, you're talking about Oscar clips. What's Glenn Close's Oscar clip going to be? Her speech about good and bad Terminators?
Probably. That's probably the one.
Like,
yeah.
Oh. Whew.
I do feel like we've seen this kind of performance honored before at the Academy, because she's kind of playing, we talked about Paul Raci as this tough love mentor figure. And in a sense, that's not so different than what Glenn Close is playing in Hillbilly Elegy. Right. She's playing the salty grandmother is sort of her role in this. And
well, Yoon Yoo-jung is playing a salty grandma too.
I know, it's true, yeah. Yeah, it's for sure that there is some symmetry between those two roles. Yoon is a lot better, I would say, in this role.
Yeah, she's in a better movie. She's got a little bit of an advantage, and she's got better lines to deliver.
Exactly. So Close is there's actually something historic about her nomination this year, which is that she is the first actor to ever receive both an Oscar nomination and a Razzie nomination for the same performance.
Wow. I think I kind of hate the Razzies, but we'll take that one.
I do despise the Razzies. The Razzies are the cheapest, like, shooting fish in a barrel nonsense. They have nominated some really incredible movies over the years as supposed worst of the year candidates. Like The Shining was something that was really well represented at the Razzies that year. The Blair Witch Project is another one. Fuck the Razzies. But it is funny that Close is up for both those awards. And I think it does speak to to this movie being kind of divisive, and I honestly think that if this movie were better liked, we would probably also see Amy Adams nominated in the Best Actress category. I still think
she was even more like a caricature. There were like I just really, you know, like a great performance. You know, you talk about soulful humanity and all this stuff. There's no soul or humanity in any of the characters in Hillbilly Elegy at all.
I'll say this: close commits, at least, in a way that I'm not sure Adams does. Adams, in some ways, I think is just very miscast in that role, and I think you're right that she is not particularly interested in finding the nuance of this character. Maybe that's the film. Close, at least, I think is kind of giving it her all, and
that's true. Like there is kind of she is a warm maternal figure, even if she is, you know, wearing hillbilly teeth, so to speak.
Yeah. So I feel like we haven't much discussed Amanda Seyfried in Mank, a movie that both of us, I think, are not huge fans of, to be honest. I would say she's pretty good in the part. I think. Yeah,
and. You know, we were talking about, you know, like newcomers, and Amanda Seyfried is kind of an up-and-comer, I would say, as a serious actress. You know, I think she's pretty good, and she, you know, she's always been good, but I think she's being recognized more as like a quote-unquote serious actress, because she came up with Mean Girls and you know, Jennifer's Body and stuff like that, movies that weren't taken especially seriously upon their release, but now, you know, she's becoming, you know, she's playing in the big leagues now.
Yeah, I mean, she's not new to the industry by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, she is somebody who's been working steadily for the last maybe 15 years.
Yes.
I feel like the first time I saw her was maybe in Veronica Mars. She plays Veronica's dead friend in that, so we see her a lot in flashbacks. I thought she's always kind of brought a charm to her work, even in movies that I don't like. I'm not a big fan of the Mamma Mia films, but I think she's pretty good in that lead role. I think that she, her as sort of a classic Hollywood movie star, I think makes a lot of sense, and I think she brings a certain warmth to a film that otherwise does not have a lot of it, I might say.
Yeah, and I felt like the way that her character was portrayed in the film, I think they really went out of their way to make her like more than just like, you know, the mistress, quote unquote, and that was something that I appreciated. Right.
I mean, so she's playing Marion Davis, obviously, who she was sort of she was
Randolph Hearst's longtime companion.
Exactly. Yep. And she sort of strikes up a friendship with Mank, and then he kind of writes a version of her into Citizen Kane, and it's not the most flattering version, so that becomes a certain source of conflict later in the film, because a lot of people feel that he's sort of doing her wrong, even though he's somebody he has a friendship with. She kind of takes it in stride. Yeah, I mean, I think that she's quite good in the role, and I think that she brings both a certain amount of Hollywood glamour that this project requires, but she also plays Davis as somebody who is sort of grounded and down to earth, and has a kind of down to earth charm in a way you wouldn't necessarily expect from a movie star of this era.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, you know, something we talk about on the podcast a lot is the relationship between like an actor's public persona and the roles that they play. And in the movie, you know, Marion Davies, she kind of knows she's not taken seriously. And maybe Amanda Seyfried can identify with that because, like I said, you know, her as someone that awards bodies take seriously is a pretty new development in a long career.
Totally. Yep.
So, you know, talking about someone who's been around for a long time at the Academy is just starting to notice them. You know, Amanda Seyfried's got nothing on Yoon Yoo-jung, who is nominated for her role in Minari. She plays like we said, the kind of eccentric, salty grandma figure in that film. She's been a big star in South Korea since the 70s. You know, she's a very well-known like soap opera actress over there. But this is her first American role. So, you know, America is kind of discovering her for the first time through this film.
Yeah, and I think she's pretty wonderful in the part. I mean, again, in certain scenes it is kind of a broad role because she is playing this. She's playing what has become, in some respects, sort of a cliche as well, which is the eccentric, foul-mouthed grandmother. But she too. Maybe warmth is something that sort of unites all of these performances in a sense. I think there is a warmth in almost all of them, she brings. I think she brings a certain nuance to that part. And then obviously, I don't want to reveal too much about where Minari goes, but there is a shift for her character at some point in the film, a kind of heartbreaking one. This is the type of movie where it sort of presents a character who it's easy to love, to fall in love with, and then the movie and the performance sort of takes that away from us at a certain point.
Absolutely, yeah, totally. And we talked about personal hooks and things like that, and warmth and heart. And Minari has all that, I think, partially because it is based on the writer and director Lee Isaac Chung, who will come up later because he's been nominated for some of the bigger awards too, or some other big awards. We don't mean to downplay Best Supporting Actress, but it's based on his family's own story too, and so that also gives it that kind of real person aspect that the Oscars do love.
Sure, totally. Yeah, I would love to. I hope that she is. I hope we get to see her at the ceremony in some respect, even if she's not flying in, just to see her on Zoom. Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah, and it is nice, there's not. I firmly believe that Minari is an American movie. It's not a foreign film just because it's mostly in Korean. But she is she is based in South Korea. She's a South Korean actress. She, like I said, this is her first, big American movie, and it's nice to see South Korea showing up. The year after Parasite.
Totally. I think it's always amazing too to see an actor speaking in a language other than English being nominated, because the Academy so rarely reaches for performances that aren't in English. It's really infrequent, and I think that her getting nominated in this case is both a testament to how charming the performance is, but also to how much general affection I think there is for Minari.
Absolutely.
Okay, Katie, so who do you think is going to win Best Supporting Actress?
Oh, man, this one's kind of a wild card. I'm
really
honestly not sure because, it is such a broad range of things. I think if I was going to make a safe bet, like if I was going to put money down, I would say Olivia Colman.
Okay. Why do you think?
Just because of the type of performance that it is, and her being a recent winner. And I don't know. It's just Hillbilly Elegy and Mank. Maybe I'm, letting my own kind of opinions on those films color them. But to me, they seem like bridesmaid, not bride movies.
Yeah, I mean, normally I think I would look at this group of nominees and I would say that Seyfried is the one who kind of fits the Academy's mold of what they would probably normally give the award to. I mean, she's again somebody who's been working for a little while in the industry, but there's still a sense that this is sort of a breakout role for somebody. She's young, she's beautiful, she's
playing a real person.
She's playing a real person. She's playing a real Hollywood actor. There's a lot going for her. But I think in some respects, even though Mank has 10 nominations, it's the most nominated film this year. I still get the general impression that the Academy does not love it. And I think it has to do with the fact that I think a lot of people sort of were a little bit disappointed with Mank. It obviously does have its defenders. It showed up on our list of the 25 best films of last year.
Right.
No thanks to me and you trying to not liking it enough to
it wasn't
to
our
rank
number one.
No.
We'll say that.
But I don't think there's as much love as maybe admiration for Mank, and it should be also noted that the Screen Actors Guild did not nominate Seyfried, and obviously the Academy is a different group, but there is a lot of overlap between those memberships. So a ton of people who are in the Screen Actors Guild are also Academy members. And if they didn't like the performance enough to nominate it, that suggests that there's plenty of people in the Academy who aren't going to vote for it.
Right.
I think that Close could win, honestly, for Hillbilly Elegy. I think the main thing going against her, honestly, is that Razzie nomination. I think that even those who voted for her might be like, wait, there are people who think this is a really bad performance, and that could hurt her. I think that the Academy might I mean, we talk about the Academy as some sort of monolithic group. It's not. It's like basically thousands of people in the industry voting for their own interests or their own tastes, whatever. But I do think that the perception that it's also a bad performance could hurt her chances. I agree that.
Yeah.
I actually think that Coleman winning recently does kind of actually, I think it actually kind of hurts her chances a little bit because I think that people might be reluctant to give her another award so soon after the last one. I will say that her role in The Father is sort of the definition of a supporting role in a number of respects. I mean, she is kind of rather literally supporting her father in that sense. It's not a terribly flashy role though. I think that Coleman is sort of, we talked about finding an Oscar clip. I think you would be hard-pressed to find one in The Father that's big and loud in the way that they tend to like.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of holding in tears for her in that film.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the Academy likes when you don't hold in your tears, generally speaking. Go ahead.
But okay, so we take those out for those various reasons. That leaves an unknown and someone who is not a star in America and an Asian star, and that goes against all my conventional wisdom.
Yeah,
the Oscars were.
I mean, I would be very surprised if either Close or Coleman lost to two actors whose first language is not English. You know, that just doesn't normally happen.
There's that too.
You know,
yeah.
So I don't know. This is a really tough race to call, in my opinion. And I'm gonna say it's gonna be close, but I think you could be right. It could end up being Coleman. I would be pretty surprised if it was any of the other three.
Yeah, they're definitely the Julia Roberts and Meryl Streep of this category this year. Two actors who are often nominated against one another.
Yeah. Okay, so who would, if you could decide who would win this award?
If I got to pick?
Yeah, if you got to pick.
Ooh. I want to say Olivia Colman again, just because I love her so much. And yeah, it's not a flashy role, and it is a classic supporting role, like you were saying. I would also be happy if Yoon Yoo-jung won, though, because she kind of the range that she brings to a kind of cliche character, like you said, because the dramatic twists and turns in the film is very impressive.
I agree. I would be happy to see either of them win as well. I think they're both good. Really, the only person in this category I explicitly do not want to see win, honestly, is Glenn Close. Sorry, Glenn.
I'd really prefer if it wasn't for this one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, eventually maybe she will win her Oscar. I just really hope it's not for Hillbilly Elegy. I don't want to see Hillbilly Elegy win anything. I think it's honestly we did not do worst movies of the year this year on the AV Club. We kind of decided that it was a tough enough year without us. We didn't necessarily need to just rip on a bunch of movies this past year.
Right. And
it
also,
seemed excessive.
In a normal year, a lot of filler gets pumped into theaters, and that filler fills also our worst of the year list, and you didn't really have that last year. So you would have been picking on indie movies, and that's just not fair.
Totally. It wouldn't have been a lot of studio films, but I do think that had we done it, I think Hillbilly Elegy would be very close to the top, or the bottom of that list.
Ooh, buddy. Have I told you my theory as to why people are trying to make Hillbilly Elegy happen, to use a Mean Girls, bastardize a Mean Girls quote, speaking of Amanda Seyfried?
No, what's your theory?
So J.D. Vance, who wrote the book Hillbilly Elegy, became wealthy working for Peter Thiel, the famous, Silicon Valley billionaire. And on the same day that they announced the Oscar nominations, J.D. Vance announced that he was running for Senate backed by Peter Thiel's money. That's my theory.
Wow. So you think that this is really part of his campaign in a sense?
Yeah. I think it's a political, it's a political thing to make him, Ohio's boy.
So who is acting on his behalf in this case? Do you just think generally culture war people?
Yeah, I think, based on the response I got to my review of Hillbilly Elegy, I think that there is a certain segment of the kind of both the, we'll call it the venture capital class, and also Republican culture warriors who really want Hillbilly Elegy to be kind of identity politics for white people. But it doesn't really represent anything that I personally recognize.
Yeah.
You know, being a white person from that same sort of background in life. So yeah, I just think that for the kind of neo-conservative wing of the Republican Party, they really want to make Hillbilly Elegy a thing.
Okay.
So.
Well, I hope they don't succeed.
When J.D. Vance is the president, I'll be proven right.
I think it's pretty embarrassing that this movie is up for Oscars, honestly.
Yeah.
And to me suggests, if nothing else, that if something has the veneer of being a prestigious project, that it can get in, even if it's sort of roundly ridiculed. You know, obviously there are people who like this film, but I think that. Geez, how do I put this? It's hard for me to imagine somebody with particularly discerning tastes liking this movie.
Right. Yeah. That's what kind of leads me to believe that it's kind of like people just really want it to be a thing. It's not that they love it so much. They just really want it to be a thing.
Right.
And like, that's why, I mean, I'm deathly serious when I said it feels like a dare. It feels like they were like, we're going to make a movie that ticks all the Oscar boxes, but it sucks. And we're going to see what happens. Like, it almost felt like they're playing chicken with the Academy a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I would almost say it plays like a parody of an Oscar movie.
Yes.
You know, like something you'd see at the beginning of like Tropic Thunder or something, you know?
Yes, totally. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I hope Close doesn't win. No offense, Glenn Close. I think you've been wonderful
Glenn
in other
Close.
things, but this should not be
You
your
were great
year.
in The Wife. She was great in The Wife.
She was very good in that. Okay, so I would say that my pick in this category is honestly probably Maria Bakalova.
Okay.
I do think that you could make the case that this is a lead performance. I think that she has nearly as much screen time as Borat, and I think the only reason it's really anyone might not consider it a lead performance is that the movie is called Borat, and it's a sequel to that. You know, I mean, she is in a lot of the film, and at a certain point in the movie, I feel like she kind of, her arc sort of takes precedence, you know, and it becomes way more about her character, you know.
Yeah, like the quote unquote, as much as there is an emotional heart to Borat, which, like you were saying, is a very broad comedy. Like, she's it, and her character's kind of arc of, you know, discovering that she doesn't have to stay in a cage just because she's a woman.
Right. She's
a literal cage.
For those who have not seen the film, she plays Borat's daughter, Tutar, and yeah, I just think it's so rare that a comedic performance is even nominated, and even rarer that one wins. So rare in the fact that when one does win, as when Marissa Tomei won for My Cousin Vinny in the early '90s, people sort of created this mean rumor that Jack Palance had read the wrong name. That there's no way they could have possibly have chosen Tomei, even though she's fucking hilarious in that movie.
Right.
And I feel like if Bakalova wins this year, that same kind of narrative might crop up. But the fact of the matter is, comedy's not easy. You know, what do they say? Dying is hard, or dying is easy, comedy is hard. You know, it's not easy, and she's not a movie star, so we do not go into the film with any preconceived notions about her. And she does make this arc believable, even in the context of a completely ridiculous Borat movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. She makes this like cartoonish idea into like a real character.
Right. We believe her transformation from somebody who is like, I mean, this almost feels like two serious terms in which to discuss a Borat movie, but somebody who basically is a complete victim of the patriarchy into somebody who is more enlightened and realizes that there could be more for her in life. I think it's a kind of a moving arc, and she sells it. She's also really funny in the role, you know?
Yeah, no, she's hilarious. And, you know, to address the elephant in the room, it took a lot of courage for her to be in that scene with Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
For publicly embarrassing, she almost deserves to win just for publicly embarrassing Rudy Giuliani. I feel like.
Man, wow. Like, the Rudy Giuliani biopic's going to be crazy, Dowd. Because what an arc. What an arc.
Is there like a sadder... Man, there was a time in which he was... I don't know. Maybe we don't need to go off on this tangent, but it's a really sad... There are a number of people in this country who attach themselves to Donald Trump in a way that they did not need to, that their legacy was semi-secure. I mean, Giuliani has been a dickhead for a few years now before
no one in
Trump.
New York likes him, so,
right.
you know.
But I do feel like in certain respects, his reputation as America's mayor, like him being mayor of New York during 9/11 was going to be like the first line of his obituary, and I'm not so sure anymore.
Now it's going to be 4 Seasons Total Landscaping and Borat.
So,
honestly,
fuck you, Rudy.
It takes a lot of courage to do what she did in that scene.
I agree. And the scene where she discovers masturbation is like the funniest thing that I saw in a movie last year. So I'm for Maria Bakalova. Let's see her win, I think.
Awesome. That's all we've got for you this week. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to Film Club wherever you get your podcasts.
This week's episode of Film Club was hosted by me, Alex Dowd, and by Katie Rife. It was produced and edited by Carl Blomberg. Our sound mixer and finishing editor is Zach Goldsboro, and our motion graphics designer is Julie Mullins. We'll be back next week with a brand new Oscar-centric episode. We're going to be talking about the Best Director race and the screenplay categories. Thanks for listening.
Bye.